So, hello everybody. This is Ron talking to you from the Erasmus Academy recording studios in Brooklyn, New York. And we have on the line today CJ, who's going to be helping with the reading and translating. So, CJ, you want to say hello?
Howdy.
All right. So, this segment or this series of segments deals with a short story of Hermann Hesse. And as you know, as you may know, he was born in 1877 and died in 1962. At 34 years old, he traveled to India, which had a great impact on his writing and thinking. He grew up in Basel, Switzerland, and in 1946 he received the Nobel Prize for Literature. And as may surprise you, he was the most read German author in the United States for many, many years during his time and afterwards. Uh, Depending upon according to the number of books that were sold and so on. So very, very popular. He writes novels, he writes poetic prose that's quite amazing, and so we'll see a lot of that expressed and found in this short story. In this text, which you see on the screen, and let's see if you can see my marking here. Is that okay? There. We're only going to go down to right here, and these are 9 to 10 minute segments to help you read through and to understand the German. So the words that have these little circles by them, just like erzählt, are translated in the right-hand column. So you can follow along there. I'm hoping you can see the text that it's large enough on your screen. So what our procedure is, I'm going to be reading the sentences out loud, and CJ will repeat after me. And as he's reading, please read out loud on yourselves so that you can get a feel of the flow and the sound of the language and get a sort of active understanding. And then I'm going to ask him several questions to unpack the grammar and look at the structure of the sentences, so step by step. And in that way, and as I ask him questions, think also yourselves what the answer is and how you would reply. And that way we can sort of work together to unpack and to deconstruct the sentence structure. And then the third step would be then I will ask him to translate, and then you should be in a position to translate a lot of it yourself in that way. Okay, so here we go. So we're going to start off with Es wird erzählt, and I'll just read aloud, and then CJ, if you want to repeat after me. Here we go. Es wird erzählt, dass der chinesische Dichter Han Fuch in seiner Jugend von einem wunderbaren Drang beseelt war. Up to there?
Es wird erzählt, dass der chinesische Dichter Han Fuch in seiner Jugend von einem wunderbaren Drang beseelt war.
Good. And the CH is actually like a guttural a little bit. Chinesische. Chinesische.
Yeah, that was
Good.
my Anglo.
That's okay. So, up to here then, let's see. So this starts out with simply a present passive voice. Es wird erzählt, literally it means it is told or it is narrated. They give you a sort of more idiomatic expression here that as the story goes, that, which is fine. But I always give you the literal meaning so that you can understand the structure. So it is told that, and then that introduces a subordinate clause. So this is the main clause. We always distinguish carefully between the main clause, which you can put a period at the end of, and subordinate clauses, which are dependent to the main clause, of which you cannot put a period at the end. That the Chinese poet Han Fuch, let's see, now where's the verb complex there up to the comma, CJ?
Beseelt war.
Good. Beseelt war. So war is the verb, and beseelt is actually a past participle serving as a predicate adjective. Was animated. And what case is this in seiner Jugend? So we have the nominative, which is the subject, the genitive, which is the possessive, dative, to or for, and then the accusative, the direct object. What case is this in seiner Jugend?
We have the dative here.
Good. And it's seiner because this is a feminine noun. If this were masculine or neuter, it would be in seinem, whatever the word would be. Just one second. Okay, so he was animated in his youth, and then von einem wunderbaren Drang. So this is sort of dative of by what something was done. He was animated by an amazing urge, etc. Okay, and then so you want to just translate that up to the comma there, CJ, and everybody try to
Sure.
translate with him if you can.
It is related that the Chinese poet Han Fuke, in his youth, was inspired by a wondrous urge.
Okay, good. And this is actually say you have the word in here, die Seele, which is the soul. So inspired works well, or animated is works fine, works well. So he was inspired by an amazing urge to do what? It's picked up with these complementary infinitives. Let's just read this. Alles zu lernen und sich in allem zu vollverkommen. Everybody?
Alles zu lernen und sich in allem zu vervollkommen,
Was zur Dichtkunst irgend gehört.
was zur die Kunst irgend gehört.
So to learn, and where's the direct object of that, CJ? Of that
Alles,
infinitive? Alles. And then to perfect. What do we do with this reflexive pronoun here? Because this is part of the verb complex. How would you translate that?
oh, the himself is the direct object.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. To perfect himself, a reflexive pronoun, in everything, in allem, just as a general word. And then in everything, and then which is picked up later in the next phrase with this was. So what's the verb of that last phrase?
Gehört,
Good. And that means to belong, or what belongs. Irgen in some way, sort of adverbally. And then how would you translate this word here? Die Kunst?
the art of poetry.
Yeah, with compound nouns, sometimes it's valuable to pick up the second part first and to translate that and to say, as you did, exactly the art of poetry. And just the word poetry itself, Dichtung just means thick or dense, as opposed to ideas that are brought together, in a very thick and compact way, as opposed to prose, which is more laid out. Okay, so having done our great work of archaeology, or digging into these sentences, you want to do the whole phrase from down to gehört?
Okay. So as said, he was animated
Mhm.
to learn everything and to perfect himself in everything. Um, that or what in any way relates or belongs to the poetic art.
Yeah, and you could even say whatever pertains to in some way as or belongs to in that sense. Great. Hold on just one second. Okay, so going on, let's read together. Er war damals, everybody,
War damals,
da noch in seiner Heimat am Gelben Fluss lebte,
da noch in seiner Heimat am gelben Flusse lebte,
auf seinen Wunsch und mit Hilfe seiner Eltern,
auf seinen Wunsch und mit Hilfe seiner Eltern,
die ihn zärtlich liebten.
die ihn zärtlich liebten.
Let's stop right there. Okay, now, starting from this point, and I put in the markers here so you can see exactly where we're starting. And sometimes it's hard to write with a mouse, so sometimes I cross over some words. So now, so he was at that time. Now, in this da can be construed in two ways. It's either an adverb meaning there or at that point, or then, or it can be a subordinating conjunction with the causal force, which means because or since. So which is it here, CJ?
In this case, it's a subordinating conjunction because of the position of the verb at the end of the clause.
Great, that's the telltale. That's how you can tell right there because the verb comes at the end. If this were adverb, you would have the verb in the second position or soon following. Okay, so how would you translate this up to here? And let's see, this means still in his homeland. Okay, go ahead.
He was at that time, um, since he still lived in his homeland on the Yellow River.
Hmm. And then
Um,
that he was, since he lived. Uh, Now, var, and this is something you have to keep in mind. Var looks like it stands by itself with this phrase, but the sentence goes all the way down. Let's go all the way down to here, because then after this comma, you have an und, which sort of picks up another independent clause. But so all this whole this long phrase, where's the verb complex with var?
Verloopt worden.
Great. You have to go all the way down. So var verloopt worden, and that's the pluperfect passive, and that means
He
he he
had been engaged.
yeah, he had been engaged. So sort of when you identify the full verb complex, you have to sort of keep that in mind because that's the structure of the main verb. So he was at that time with a young lady from a good house. He had been with a young lady from a good house engaged. So that's your core sentence, and everything else fits in between, describing some other things that are not quite as important syntactically as the main verb. So let's see. Let's go with uh, on his wish and with the help of his parents. So what does D refer back to? What's the antecedent?
Eltern.
Yeah, his parents who, serving as the subject in the relative clause, and then the verb is obviously
Liebten.
liebten, and who loved him, a direct object. And we're just doing this fairly in detailed first, and then we'll probably work more smoothly or more quickly through these sentences. And here's is an zärtlich, which tenderly um, as an adverb. Okay, so you want to do the whole thing, starting with es war or er war, sorry.
Sure. Sure. He had been engaged at that time, since he still lived in his homeland on the Yellow River,
Hmm.
on his wish and with help of his parents, who loved him dearly.
Hmm.
He had been engaged with a woman from a good family.
Good, very nice. Good family is a good way to idiomatically way to translate that in guten Haus. Good. And now, und, picking up the next independent clause, because this connects those two, all the way down to here. What's the verb complex in that clause?
Festgestellt werden.
And there's something else that goes with that. With it.
Sollte.
Sollte, yes, here's the whole verb complex. Und die Hochzeit with sollte in the second position, sollte festgesetzt werden. And how would you translate that verb complex?
It should be set.
Yeah, it should be set. And this is and these modal auxiliaries have either a um, a a factual or a subjective sense to them. And this is probably the subjective sense, indicating something that was supposed to happen or is said to. So and the marriage or the wedding, the Hochzeit, the word for the wedding, was said to be set or was supposed to be set since he's deliberating this whole thing about the poet. His wedding and his engagement is going to be fulfilled in this wedding, and his wedding imminently. So that's the sense of this subjective interpretation of the modal was said or was supposed to be set, and then on a uh, lucky on a good luck day. Okay, so let's see. You want to do that whole second part, und, with starting with und?
Sure. So in the wedding, can I say like was now soon supposed to be set on a good luck day?
That's right. Good. Um, let's see. And then this next sentence goes on. Hanfuch was at that time about 20 years old. But this is going to be the next section that we're going to cover in the next day. So thanks so much for tuning in, and hope you were able to follow the analyzing of the sentences and also and CJ's translation. Good. Okay, thanks so much, and talk to you again soon. Thanks. Bye bye.